One day, I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back. Until then, there must be no regrets, no tears, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine. The Dalek invasion of Earth. There you go.
Hi, this is Mark, and welcome to episode 25 of Nerdology, sponsored by CSO, the cult fanzine. I'm joined today by my very special guest, Mr. Declan May. Hey, Declan.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Good stuff. Now, it's quite an important year in the world of Doctor Who, because it's the 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
And we figured what we'd do is like a little beginner's guide, if you like, for people who maybe have only seen the new series and might like to perhaps try and explore the classic series as it's called now, or maybe if you've never watched Doctor Who before and you're wondering what all the fuss is about, maybe we can kind of help to guide you through it so that it's not too scary the first time you experience it.
Because there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there, and it can be quite intimidating for people, especially with the backlog.
Well, in a way, I'm quite envious of anyone who's coming to it fresh, because they've got so much to enjoy and look forward to. Because we're two sad old jaded. Well, I'm a sad old jaded fanboy.
Oh, so, so am
I. So we've seen a lot of it. In fact, actually, I've been going through some of the old recons because of the whole missing episodes thing that's been going on. I figured I'd go back and watch some of the ones that I haven't seen yet. So, being quite a bad fan, I'd never watched the recon of the Daleks Master Plan. So I thought I'd go and watch that, which is really good.
I've never seen it.
The loose cannon one is awesome. They've done a great job of putting that together, so I would recommend watching that.
Okay.
But before we go on to anything else, I think we have to talk about the biggest thing in Doctor Who this week, certainly, as we record. I'm sure there'll be something else next week. Just a little thing called The Day of the Doctor. This week, a webisode was released. It was called The Night of the Doctor. If you haven't watched it yet, I would probably recommend to pause the podcast right now, hit YouTube, search it out, watch it for 7 minutes, and then come back. Because the best way to watch this is completely unspoiled, which I would say is probably fairly unlikely by now. But if you get the chance, watch it anyway. And if you're familiar with Classic Who, you might be very happy with the outcome.
Oh, yeah, you need to watch it unspoiled, because the surprise is just overwhelming. Because I was actually chatting to you at the time over Facebook. I knew nothing about this, and you sent me a link to this thing, and I clicked the link, and it was this episode, The Night of the Doctor. I had no idea what it was about. I knew it was something semi-official, or was official, as a prequel, and it blew me away because I knew nothing. I came to it totally cold. That's thanks to you.
I mean, it was incredible. Just watching that the first time round, I had a ridiculous grin from ear to ear.
Oh, yeah.
Squeeing like a sad fanboy that I was. And, okay, so we're going to go into spoiler territory now, so you've been warned. How fantastic to see Paul McGann back again.
Oh, he was just wonderful.
If anyone deserved more screen time, it's got to be him, surely.
That's the thing. After you watch it, you watch the 7 minutes of him, and you're just... First of all, there are moments in it that took me back to the TV movie.
He still scrubs up pretty well, doesn't he? He hasn't aged that badly, really, when you consider it's been a while now since
it's like
the TV movie.
About 18 years, 17 years. And he looks more or less the same. But that's the thing I loved about it. He was sort of... The way he appeared, when he appeared in this episode, he sort of made to look slightly in bad shape. Sort of physically and mentally was haggard. unshaven, sort of ill-dressed, because normally the Doctor dresses well, but he's sort of like a patchwork of...
I really like that outfit, actually, because
that's a great outfit,
they did an outfit for Big Finish, didn't they, to sort of relaunch his Doctor, which was kind of cool, but this was different again. But
it's an evolution, a sort of... as the, there's this idea that the Doctor, or there used to be the idea, especially during the JNT years, of the Doctor wearing a sort of uniform.
Yeah.
Whereas this, as it's been more recently, especially the new series, the Doctor's clothes have evolved. And whatever Paul McGann, the Eighth Doctor, was wearing, you could see it was an evolution. You could see, he was wearing this coat. It's a battered coat over sort of... It was like a necktie, was it? Or
like a scarf or something, wasn't it?
A scarf, and then the waistcoat, and he looked a bit like the TARDIS itself. When we actually saw the outside of the police box, it was in bad shape as well. It sort of looked...
I mean, we've got no way of telling how long it's been since the TV movie to this point for him, so obviously a lot of stuff can have happened in the meantime. For 7 minutes worth, I thought it was tremendously put together. I thought the script was great. I mean, Stephen Moffat has been knocked by certain quarters, but I think he really pulled out the hat for that. And it gives me a lot of anticipation for next week.
Well, the thing that I was most surprised about, I mean, when I heard that there was what did they call a mini-sode or mini episode coming up, I thought it's either going to be something with Matt Smith and Jenna Coleman, the Doctor and Clara, or something with David Tennant, a little treat, a little lead-in special. That
would make sense.
Or at the very least, John Hurt doing something. Now that bit at the start of the episode where what's her name, Cass, the pilot of the gunship,
the ship,
and she says, "I'm not looking for a doctor." And then you hear his voice, and it's such a recognizable voice, that sort of soft Liverpudlian lilt that he has. I'm a doctor, but not the one you were looking for. Now that's brilliant in two levels, because that's probably what all the fans were thinking as well. That's not the one we were looking. That wasn't the one we were expecting.
Obviously, there's a lot of fan service going on there as well, because they crash land onto the planet Khan, which we've obviously visited before with Tom Baker.
Yeah, in the brain of Morbius.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think I'm not too sure, because I mean I listened to Big Finish, but Karn has been used quite a lot in the Eighth Doctor Big Finish range. So there was and of course he referenced the Big Finish companions. Yeah,
that kind of makes them canon now, I guess.
It does. It sort of does.
Nick Briggs will be very happy with that.
Well, yeah. So he meant it. Yeah, that sort of makes. I don't know if it makes all of Big Finish canon, but it certainly makes the Eighth Doctor's story sort of canon, because what did he mention? Charlie.
He rattled them all off, didn't he? All the Big Finish companions.
There was one I didn't recognize.
Keres.
Keres, yeah.
Keres? Yeah, that's one of the very early ones.
Oh, right, okay. It wasn't one from like one of the comic strips or something like that? Or?
I think it might have crossed over, actually. Yeah, I've got a feeling, because I'm not too familiar with that character. I'm pretty sure it was a character from the comic strip that crossed over to Big Finish, because they've done that once or twice.
Yeah.
With characters like that. But yeah,
Molly you mentioned from Dark Eyes. Which if you listen to, I'm sure we'll maybe talk about this later, but Dark Eyes is almost like a lead-in to the Time War.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Especially with I won't spoil it, but with the Daleks and everything. Something's obviously going on. But the thing I love the most about this is Stephen Moffat, incidentally, has just put up, or something's just been put up on the BBC blog, an interview with Stephen Moffat about the...
I read that, yeah. It's really good.
That, and he said he never imagined the Paul McGann Doctor fighting the Time War, because he's sort of like this warm... When you think of the Eighth Doctor, he seems to be this warm, caring
kind of romantic character,
romantic,
isn't he?
Yeah. And he's decent, and he's, I don't know, sort of always does the right thing. And to imagine him as committing genocide, obviously the character would have had to change a lot, or whatever. But it's sad as well, because at the end of it, you've got the Eighth Doctor sort of losing all hope.
You get it's a tantalizing glimpse because if you're going just by the TV canon, we had that moment back in 1996, and now we've got this little 7-minute spell, and it's heartbreaking to have him just for that short amount of time. And then, I mean, it's a fantastic moment. It's really well written where I suppose the choice is taken out of his hands a bit because they've kind of told him that he's dead and he's only got minutes to resurrect himself. So, but yeah, the speech he does when he's about to take the potion is brilliant. Yeah, he says, physician, heal thyself and all that kind of stuff.
Physician, heal thyself. And it's sort of sad, this great man sort of scared and alone, and he's been trying to avoid the Time War, and he just realizes, well, this is it now. I'm part of it. And that's it. We get this tantalizing glimpse of him, and then it's over, and he dies in such a sad way. It's really sad. And you just want to see, I want to see more of him, maybe.
Well, because of the way it works, maybe we might get to see him with Peter Capaldi next year. Yeah. That would be nice.
That would be great. They could do that. Or maybe even in the Day of the Doctor episode itself, we'll get maybe more flashbacks or something to the beginning of the Time War or something. Or I don't know because it's...
Well, it depends how they're going to play this out, because obviously the idea when the series came back was that Christopher Eccleston followed straight on from Paul McGann, but now we know that's not the case. Exactly. So how are they going to resolve that at the end of Day of the Doctor?
Are we going to have John Hurt regenerating into
Christopher Eccleston? Maybe. I don't know.
It's a secret. I mean, I watched an interview with Paul McGann from about 2 weeks ago when they're asking him, are you any way involved with the 50th? He said, no, absolutely, haven't been asked. I know nothing. And he's so convincing. Well, I suppose he's an actor. So who knows? Maybe it's the same with Christopher Eccleston. Maybe we can only hope.
An interview that there were a group of the former Doctors. I think it was in New Zealand or Australia somewhere. They were doing a panel, and they were asked if they were disappointed not to be involved in the 50th anniversary. And I think Colin Baker and one or two others said, it's a real shame. We would have loved to have done it. And Paul McGann was a bit more circumspect. He didn't kind of give anything away. He was just kind of
I remember
very sort of oblique, and just sort of made little references of it would have been nice. That was just awesome. That made my day yesterday.
Oh, really? It made my day. It was absolutely wonderful. And the bit at the end when he looks...
Yeah, the young John Hurt.
The young John Hurt. I mean, that really surprised me.
I'm guessing that was from I, Claudius. I don't know. Because that was a BBC production, wasn't it? They might have been able to pinch it from that.
Or any... I, Claudius... Yes. He seems to be in his, 30s? It's hard to tell. Because we only get a brief glimpse, but it's very well done. I mean, it's not ropey at all.
And it makes you wonder if they are going to do another transformation, maybe they can have Christopher Eccleston, even if he's not able to physically appear, they can probably manipulate something to make the transition.
Exactly, use a bit of,
We're possibly getting into retcon territory here.
Well, maybe, but I mean, the thing is as well, the fact that he was so young, and we know that the John Hurt Doctor is, in his 70s? And Time Lords age slower, so how long was the Time War then? How long did he fight it? Like hundreds of years? I don't know.
I can't wait to see the special. It's going to be awesome.
And it also, this is just my theory now. You know when the show came back and the Doctor was always going on, I'm 900 years old. Right? Whereas in the old, I think, was it in Sylvester McCoy, he said, I'm 953 or whatever. Yeah. This is just my fan...
It's just going up and down all over the place, hasn't it, over the years?
But maybe he started counting again after the Time War.
Yeah.
Maybe he's been the Doctor again for 900 years since he was John Hurt, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely holds water. I can see that.
I don't know, maybe. Because if he was fighting the Time War for a very, very long time, like say 100 years, or 200 years, whatever, it's hard to know. Or maybe he just aged really rapidly. He's battle scarred and ruined. Oh, I don't know. I'm just so excited to see it now. I just can't. I can't wait.
We were having a little chat. Oh,
Sorry.
Carry on, yeah.
No, you're going ahead.
I was going to say we were having a little chat before we started recording, and I think you mentioned that it was a good way of sort of convincing people who've perhaps in the past said it's not been the best year for Doctor Who, considering it's the anniversary. I think that surely must appease them slightly, you would think.
Oh my, yeah, because people said, "Oh, we're not getting." Again, that phrase "we're not getting," that entitlement thing, which always annoys me.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, well, there's nothing. We're getting a 75-minute episode and an adventure in time and space, and that's it." But look at this. We've got this episode with Paul McGann regenerating into John Hurt. Who knows what else will be coming? The entire Doctor
There is
Who...
another webisode to come out before.
Is there?
I think it's called The Last Day. So okay. We're in for more treats before the big event.
And isn't there something in Children in Need? Is Children in Need today?
I think Children in Need. I think they're going to show a clip from the special.
Right.
So yeah.
So I mean, so if there's another episode to come out, The Last Day, maybe that's like the last day of the Time War, or
maybe.
But we've seen that, haven't we? In the end. Oh, anyway, the mind boggles. But I'm just, if people say we're not, there's not enough. I mean, this is incredible.
I mean, this year, what a year for Doctor Who. We've got the 50th anniversary story coming up. We're going to have an amazing Christmas special with Capaldi. Yeah. We've had practically 2 full Patrick Troughton stories come back, which were thought lost forever.
Yeah.
And we've also had some pretty decent stories from Series 7 as well. So I put it down as a pretty decent year for Doctor Who.
I mean, the Series 7, the final episode, The Name of the Doctor, I mean, that was a multi-Doctor episode. We got to see all of the Doctors.
Yeah.
We got to see... we got mythos, and it all ties in with the 50th anniversary, so we're told.
Yeah.
And that's all part of the anniversary. We had such a good run of stories. We've got this the anniversary special coming up. Then at Christmas we've got the regeneration, the final episode of Matt Smith. So, like I was saying to you before recording, between now and Christmas, I mean, since the Night of the Doctor aired yesterday, we will have seen by Christmas time 5 Doctors.
That's pretty impressive.
So Paul McGann.
I'm more than happy with that.
Yeah, Paul McGann, John Hurt, David Tennant, Matt Smith, and Peter Capaldi. So that's a lot. That's 5 new, well, not new Doctors, but 5 new stories involving 5 different Doctors, if you want to look at it like that. Or maybe more. Who knows what's in the 50th anniversary? Maybe there might be cameos, and it's a lot. And then all the time, there's been, every month this year there's been a book released celebrating the 50th anniversary. Those e-reads. One written by Neil Gaiman, the most recent one.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
There's been the audios released monthly, besides the Big Finish things. There's the documentaries on, retrospectives, all this amount of stuff that is coming up. This is, if we're talking about a beginner's guide to Doctor Who, this is the year. This is the time to start. If you weren't into Doctor Who before, now is the time to start, because look at this.
And although it's this huge thing that spans 50 years, there are lots of little stepping on points. So you don't feel like you have to have seen every single episode to be able to enjoy it or take something from it.
Exactly. Well, like Stephen Moffat said, the 50th anniversary, there's going to be acknowledgement of the past, but also it's going to ensure that the series continues for another 50 years. It's you can look back, but also you need to look forward and get new viewers on board. And if I was someone who just heard of Doctor Who now and said, what's all this? What's 50 years? Wow! And maybe watch the anniversary special. I'd want to go back and say, well, I want more of this. It's almost like it's constantly being rebooted.
Yeah.
The 50th anniversary is a perfect opportunity to step on board.
If you look back at the classic series, every time a new producer came along, they wanted to put their stamp on it, and it kind of rebooted itself in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, if we go back to the first Doctor then, so if we're going to come up with these aren't definitive by any means.
No.
These are just our choices and what we think would be good stepping on points. I think certainly first Doctor-wise, I think one thing, if you're not au fait with 1960s TV... It's played out at a different pace from what you'd be watching today. So you have to bear that in mind. It was pretty much recorded as live because editing back then was so expensive. They couldn't afford to do multiple takes. So you'd kind of have them recording and maybe have one break during the whole thing. So it takes on almost like a sort of theatrical sort of style to the way it plays out,
and the acting is also very theatrical because a lot of
they've got this multi-camera setup. So you've got people that've got to hit their mark, and they've got to. But I love that. I think that's one of the interesting things. It's like a document of how TV was made. I find all that sort of stuff fascinating.
Well, yeah, I mean, for example, if you watch, say, a recent episode like Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, which is really fast-paced and really quick and lots of edits and jumps and quips and one-liners. And then you went back to like a 1960s black and white episode, let's say from the Hartnell era, from the first Doctor. Having not seen it before, you'd think, "What is this? Is this the same?
Is this the same program? Yeah.
Is this the same program? It's it's slow,
but it so is. It so is.
Yeah.
It's kind of almost like training your brain to sort of. I don't want to make it sound like homework because that would be horrendous. Having to sort of having to fight your way through it. But it's if you try out a few stories that people kind of recommend, you'll find if you go into forums and places like Twitter, you'll have people who are sort of fans, long-standing fans, and they love the idea of getting people on board to classic stories. So they will have loads of ideas of stories to go back to. Yeah. I mean, have you got any Hartnell stories that you really like that you feel would be good jumping on points?
I mean, obviously, you probably have the same idea as me. I would, of course, say watch an Unearthly Child. Mm-hmm. And maybe an episode or two of the, what is it, 10,000 BC or the Tribe of Gum. Not all of it.
Well, you and I agree on that.
Oh, really?
Now, Mr. Southall, that I do the other podcast with, the Blue Box podcast, who's a far more knowledgeable man than I on Doctor Who, loves the stuff that happens from the sort of second episode in. Right. I find it pretty hard going, I have to be honest.
Yeah,
the first episode is stunning. It sets it up, and it is. I mean, you watch it and you think, this really is the same program.
Yeah.
It's a great introduction. It sets up all of the sort of tropes that you kind of expect from Doctor Who, and it starts off that mystery of who is this mysterious traveller, and you've got a great core cast there as well.
I mean, the cast are brilliant, and it is, it's like what Russell T Davies did with Rose. It's all from the companions' point of view. In this case, it's Ian and Barbara. We see it through their eyes. They are the audience there. Yeah. And whenever they go into the police box for the first time going to TARDIS, that's the first time we see it as well as an
when
audience.
You consider the budgets they had back then weren't huge by any means. I think they do an amazing job of putting it on the screen. I think that opening shot when you see the fog and the policeman walking and the doors open, it looks absolutely amazing.
It's so well done as a piece of television. Just that one episode, it's flawless. It's absolutely flawless, and it's
at the second attempt.
Yes, that's true. The second attempt, and but there's enough in it, to. Say if you hadn't seen Doctor Who before, any Doctor Who, as people who watched it then at the time would obviously it being the first episode wouldn't have. There's enough there to say, I want more of this. Wow, this is weird. This is different. I've never seen anything like this.
I forget what I can't remember if I was watching or listening to something, and somebody made a really good point of saying TV back in the 60s, if you watched a program on TV, the intro would be, stock footage, like just sort of static cards with the name of the program on and some sort of stock music. And then you see this come on your screen and your mind would be absolutely blown. This is 1963. This is way before psychedelia. You're getting this incredible music, you're getting the crazy effects going on the screen. So it is very, very different from anything else that was on TV at that point.
It is, and when you mention that, it just makes me realize what a weird show it is.
Yeah.
What is it? I mean, as you said, the music, this sort of the electronic weird music that at the time people were listening to the Beatles and Cliff Richard, Pink Floyd and all that were well ahead in the future. The idea of an everyday object, the police box being bigger on the inside, this mysterious traveler and his granddaughter, it's just a weird program, and it hooks you. I mean, I suppose we take it for granted now because we're so used to Doctor Who. But had you not seen that before, you'd think this is bonkers. This is mad. But so I think that. And then maybe,
I think that's a good stepping on point.
And maybe the following episodes, just because then we say, oh, they've travelled back in time and now they're at the time of the cavemen. So that, but I don't know. This sounds an awful thing to say, but I'd be slightly embarrassed watching the whole thing with somebody who had.
I think it's a really hard sell as well. If you're going to sit someone down who'd never seen it before, and once they've got over that really incredible first episode, then to sit down and watch what is effectively caveman politics play out.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a hard sell. Some people will love it. Like JR. Hi, JR. And some people will think, wow, this is really hard going. Moving on a few years, in the Hartnell era, I think another really good one to introduce people to would be the Time Meddler.
Yes.
I think it's a really neat story. I think it's one of the first, if not the first, of what we like to call the pseudo-historicals.
Yeah,
so
I think it is.
It's set back in history, but there's some kind of weird shenanigans going on. It sets up other stuff. We won't blow the surprises, but there's stuff in there that changes the show or our conception of the show in many ways.
It does, and it's quite. In fact, that is the first Hartnell story I ever saw. Was the Time Meddler. In fact, before that, I'd seen the Dalek Invasion of Earth, the movie, the Peter Cushing movie.
Yeah,
I'd seen that, and the first proper Hartnell story was the Time Meddler, and I just assumed, all of Doctor Who must be like that. This is when it was repeated on TV, or maybe it was I watched it on a VHS or something. But it's a great jumping on point as well, because it's a familiar how to say it without spoiling it. It's set at a time that would be familiar to most people with even a passing interest in history.
You've got a big historical moment.
Yeah.
You've got something a little bit science fiction going on there in the background. You've also got, I think, Hartnell in one of his better performances. He can be a little bit up and down depending on his health, because he wasn't a well man. And I think the companions, certainly, I don't know if they get quite as much recognition as maybe Ian and Barbara. I love Ian and Barbara. They're probably one of my favourite companion pairings. But I think Stephen and Vicky, Peter Purvis, I think he's really underrated as an actor. I really like him.
Oh, he's great in that.
He's a real sort of action hero, isn't he?
Yeah, I know that later on his character sort of got shifted or changed a bit to sort of or I think he's even on record as saying that he wasn't happy with some of the direction his character
I think the problem he had was that he appeared in one of the earlier stories before he got cast as a regular companion, and they kind of liked him, and they said to him, "Well, would you like to come in because William Russell's leaving?" And it was really, really short notice. So I think they still had stories prepared which were written for Ian and Barbara, the previous two companions. Galaxy 4 was the one that he quotes.
Yeah,
and he says he's having to take on Barbara's dialogue.
Yes.
So he's this big strapping man, and he's having to pretend to be afraid of some quite slight ladies with ray guns, which is not great in his opinion.
Because essentially, as well, if you were a fan, if you had seen the new series, right, and not seen any of the old, and you watched the Time Meddler, Stephen is almost like a Captain Jack figure.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know, you can see he's like a
space pilot from the future.
A space pilot from the future, sort of dashing, handsome, and the story is, as you said, it's a pseudo-historical, so it's an historical with science fiction elements. A lot like.
And you can't talk about the story without mentioning the monk.
The monk, yes.
Peter Butterworth, I think he's brilliant.
Oh, he's absolutely superb. I'm a big
to
fan
old geezers
of
like us, he's better known for having done the Carry On films.
Carry On,
which is a kind of a British institution for anyone who's not familiar with those. It's kind of like a comedy series of films, and he's in a lot. I think he really makes that story. I think he's a great sort of villain. He's a lovable villain.
A lovable villain, and he's I don't want to, as I said, I don't want to spoil it, but he's a sort of a prototype for another character.
I can see where you're going. Yeah,
there's a character introduced later on. In another Doctor's run, who sort of he prefigures it a little bit, and it's also a really mysterious story. You know, there's a mystery there. You, as a viewer, you're not just watching some historical event going on. You've got this whole extra layer. I think that would be perfect. I actually didn't have that down on my list, but now that you mention it, I think that's perfect. The one I had down was for the Hartnell, the first Doctor, was the Dalek invasion of Earth.
That's another good one.
That's a good, because the first Dalek story is great, but I think there's more to identify with in the Dalek invasion of Earth, being that it's set on Earth. But no, the Time Meddler I think would trump that. I don't know. What do you think of the Dalek invasion of Earth?
I think it's a good story, and I think I agree with what you said. It's more, you can relate to it a little bit more than you can to the original Dalek story, because it's right on your doorstep.
Yeah.
It makes for a pretty good viewing. I can't remember how many parts it is now. I think it's
quite long.
With a lot of the 60s stories can be anywhere between 4 and 6 parts, sometimes even as many as 12 parts.
Yeah.
In something like the Daleks Master Plan. But it doesn't feel like it drags. It's good viewing.
It's good viewing, but what's the Time Meddler's 4, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
4
so.
episodes.
Yeah.
So maybe that's more accessible. Really, that's 2 hours of your time. Really, not even 2 hours. What were the episodes? They were 23, 24 minutes at the time.
Yeah, about that. Yeah,
about that, and the Time Meddler. Yeah, I could watch that again and again. Actually, that one, especially the opening scenes when Stephen wanders into the control room of the TARDIS, and he's sort of bedraggled, and is he carrying a teddy bear?
He's got a toy panda, isn't he?
Panda. That's
a bit strange.
It's a bit. So I mean, what a crazy show this is. But I mean, it's like
you got the space helmet for a cow as well.
That's right. Hartnell's, he's in sparkling form in this.
Oh yeah, lots of Billy Fluffs along the way as well.
Billy Fluffs.
For the uninitiated, William Hartnell, he wasn't a particularly well man, and he would sometimes stumble on his lines, and because of this whole problem of not being able to afford to go back and edit, they'd have to leave them in. So they're affectionately known as Billy Fluffs. So you got a few of those smattered throughout his time on the show.
I wonder. Well, I imagine that during the upcoming An Adventure in Time and Space, or Space and Time, the Mark Gatiss docudrama about the genesis of Doctor. I suppose they'll go into more detail about that, about his medical condition, and I think there was a lot of drink as well, as far as I understand. But he was a very unwell man and unhappy man. But as you said, they couldn't go back and.
Which kind of brings us on to the second Doctor.
Oh God, my favourite.
So, bear in mind, your mind's already been blown if you're watching in 1963 by all this crazy space stuff going on, and traveling in time and space, going to these faraway planets and seeing all this fantastic stuff go on. And then, without too much kind of prior warning, they decide to change the lead actor, which is something pretty much unheard of. I mean, it's happened once or twice in other stuff, other sort of shows, but it generally means the death knell for that particular program.
Well, when it was done in other shows, they would just replace. Like, I don't know, did they do it in Robin Hood or?
Yeah,
they've done it in at the time. If the lead actor was unwell or had gone on to something else or had died, they just replace the actor and keep the same character, and we just assume it was the same guy. But in this
the great
case,
choice they made was not to stick him in a grey wig and try and make him be William Hartnell.
Yeah, exactly.
They let him be his own man.
Exactly. I mean, an utterly, totally different man. And, because of the recent find of the missing episodes, The Enemy of the World and The Web of Fear, we get to see a bit more of how great he was. I think I may be biased because he's my favourite classic
It's so
Doctor.
hard for me to choose. It's a tie between him and Tom Baker.
Yes, I mean, I just can't get enough of Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor, and I see there's a lot of the 11th Doctor in him, and
I see that.
You can tell it's the same man, but his story, because there's so many episodes missing, we don't have that much to choose from. And if you wanted to show somebody a story from that era,
you've got a slightly smaller selection to choose from.
You do, and some of them are absolutely wonderful, and some of them aren't so great.
It's a bit of a mixed bag, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, even if the story itself isn't that great, Troughton is just spellbinding. You watch him on the screen, and his performance is pitch perfect. Yeah. And he's this incredible. He's quite a complex character because he comes across as this kind of bumbling, sort of comedic character, but you've got that sort of dark undercurrent, which I don't know if you saw Stephen Moffat being interviewed. They did a thing for BBC Wales, and he kind of goes over each Doctor.
Yes.
And he's saying that there's this one thing that's sort of there in the background on all of them, and particularly from the first one, that he wanted to try and make sure it retained was this kind of intimation that he's actually a pretty dark character behind this facade.
Yeah, he's an alien. He's a dark character. He's puts on this
capable
sort of
some pretty messed up stuff when required.
Absolutely, and he's very clever about it. I mean, because one of the stories that I chose as for the second Doctor for a new viewer was Tomb of the Cybermen.
Yeah,
I know that for some reason it goes up and down in fan estimation, but I absolutely love it.
I think one of the problems with Tomb of the Cybermen was it was sort of revered as this classic for so many years because it was missing, and then when it came back, there's only one way for it to go, really. If it's been hailed as this incredible story, I like it. I really enjoy it, and I think there's some beautiful moments in there.
Beautiful moments, and this especially just going back to the sort of how he can be a bit dark and a bit mysterious and a bit tricksy. He essentially, in that story, without spoiling it too much, sets in chain the events that cause all the problems for everyone. It's set in the tombs of the Cybermen. These archaeologists can't gain access to the tombs themselves, and the Doctor basically tells them how to do it, knowing full well what will happen. And so there's this dark undercurrent, as if he knew this was always going to happen, and here's my role in it. But he still plays this affable, sort of bumbling, and he's a father figure to Victoria in it.
Yeah, there's that beautiful scene, isn't there, where they're talking about she's obviously just in the previous story, she's lost her father. Her father's died, and he kind of takes her under his wing, and he's saying to her about how he can't see his family anymore, but they're still there in his mind, and he can see them when he wants to.
It's a beautiful moment. That's why I thought, because of the emotional depth of it, which was sometimes lacking from old stories.
I think it sums up Troughton's take on the Doctor. I think he's such a varied performance that it all feels real. It doesn't feel like it's jarring in any way. It's a very complex character.
Exactly, and he's such a. I mean, he was I think he's one of the few actors who, after Doctor Who, managed to transition into other roles really easily. He really was playing a role. Some of the other actors who played the Doctor, Tom Baker, for example, towards the end of his run, he was essentially playing Tom Baker.
Yeah.
John Pertwee to a certain extent, but Patrick Troughton, you can see he's playing a role. He's studied it. He knows the character. Yeah. And he knows the emotional highs and lows, and I think it comes across in that story, Tomb of the Cybermen. But what choice did you have? What did you think for the second?
Well, I've got a couple.
Doctor?
I mean, thanks to recent events, we've got a couple more stories that we couldn't have done if we were recording this last year. I think Enemy of the World, which has just been returned to the archive after being missing for nearly 50 years, is a great story. It's a 6-parter, but it doesn't feel like it drags at all. It's available on iTunes as we record, but it's due on DVD within a week or two of this being recorded.
25th, I think, now that I'm checking. It's the 25th of November. It's released in DVD in the UK, at least.
So I'll try not to spoil it as much as I can. It's one of the reasons why it's a special story is they do this from time to time. It's something that you'll see in other Doctors as well. You'll have a doppelganger. So the Doctor turns up on a beach in Australia, goes for a little dip in the sea. There's lots of nice little comedy moments there, and it looks quite epic because they've obviously spent a lot of the budget on the first episode. You've got hovercraft and helicopters, and it turns out that there's this guy who's trying to gain world power as this kind of dictator type, and he just happens to look exactly like Patrick Troughton's Doctor. He's called Salamander, and he's got a quite an unusual Mexican accent.
Mexican?
Yeah.
See, because I'm waiting for it to come out in DVD to watch. I haven't seen it yet, and I know very little of the story. So essentially, I would be coming to it as a new viewer. So, I mean, so you say it doesn't drag, it doesn't...
No, it's great fun. Episode 3 was in the archive for quite some time because of the way these missing stories have kind of found their way back. Episode 3 had been around for quite a while, so we'd had that to be able to watch on its own, but you couldn't really... Although all the audio still existed, because fans at the time, although they couldn't record the video, they could record the audio and listen back to it. We could kind of reconstruct it. But that episode sitting on its own doesn't really reflect what the rest of the story is like. It's almost something of its own, which you'll understand once you've watched it.
Does it surprise you? Did it surprise you when you watched it?
Yeah, because the two big stories that came out were Enemy of the World and Web of Fear. Web of Fear is heralded as this classic, and I love it. It's a fantastic story. But because, I was aware of Enemy of the World when I was a kid growing up. You read all the program guides and that kind of stuff, and you think, yeah, that could be interesting. But perhaps because it didn't have, the legendary monsters, because that was the season of the monsters. You had the Daleks, you had the Ice Warriors, and all these various sort of big monsters coming. You had the Yeti, all in that series. This is the one that stands alone from that. It's almost like a Doctor Who take on James Bond, that kind of big epic thriller sort of thing, global conspiracies and that kind of stuff.
Enemy bases and all that kind of stuff.
And Patrick Troughton is brilliant in this. I mean, all the casts are really, really good. The supporting cast are excellent, but Troughton... We've said this before on the other podcast. You really see the nuances in his performance that you can't see from watching stills in a reconstruction.
Right.
And it's you're in for a treat if you want to try and get your head around how the Second Doctor works, this is a really good story. So I'd recommend that one. And the other one that came to mind, which is pretty much a nailed-on recommendation, is the War Games.
Yeah, I had that as well. That's my all-time favorite, actually.
And that is his final story, and he goes out with a real bang.
There's so much in it. I mean, it's historical, it's science fiction, it's it starts to introduce. This is why it would be interesting for a new viewer. It starts to introduce or go more into detail of the mythology, the mythology of the Doctor. It's the first mention we have.
Until we have this story, we don't. I mean, there's very little information about the Doctor. You know, he's an alien.
Yeah.
On the run from his own people. That's about it.
Yeah. And then we get there's the Time Lord. The first time the Time Lords are mentioned, without spoiling it too much, he meets another Time Lord. But there's a lot more in it than that. It's incredible. I mean, it's 10 episodes.
Yeah.
There is a lot of, I don't want to say filler, but
it's done in an entertaining way.
It's done because of the performances.
It doesn't feel like you're just sitting there thinking, "Oh God, when is this going to end?"
Oh yeah, never. At no point do you feel that, and it's heart-wrenching. I find it really sad.
It is. I mean, they kind of did something similar for Donna Noble's exit in the new series.
Oh, and not the Stolen Earth, the one after the Stolen Earth.
Journey's End.
Journey's End. It's like that. It's heartbreaking like that.
Yeah.
And really, it's as we know, it's his last story as the Second Doctor. Well, of course, he came back.
The last one of his run.
Last one of his run, and every time I watch it, when the end's coming, and I really think, no, I really don't want him to go. I really don't want him to go. Even though I know. I've seen that story so many times.
You've got two great villains in there as well. I mean, Philip Maddock is
chilling.
Someone in sort of Doctor Who folklore, because he's been in quite a number of different stories right the way across the series, and he's great in that. Absolutely superb. I think he appeared earlier in the same series in the Crotons. I think that was the same season.
Yes, it's.
So they get him all bearded up and wearing funny glasses, and he's really spooky.
It's a really chilling, and here's the thing I find about a very modern performance. You know what I mean? It's less stagey, less theatrical. The Philip Maddock's performance is very sort of subtle, and like you could see him clearly in the new series playing exactly the same role, the same character.
Yeah, I could see that.
You've
also got the War Chief as well. Who, I feel really bad now because I forget the actor's name, but it's Mr. Mika from Rent-A-Ghost.
Yes, Edward something. His name is. Oh, I'm a bad fan.
But he's really good in it.
He's very good.
He's superb.
He's very a bit more theatrical, but the role he plays is vital importance, and it's connected again to the Time Meddler, I suppose. We get to meet another prototype for a future character, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
He's may as well say he's like a prototype master.
Yeah.
I think even people have suggested that that's the case. But there's great moments in it. I would recommend anyone to watch that. Just for the variety and the depth and the scope and it goes. You've got Romans, you've got First World War, you've got American Civil War, Mexican Revolution, weird space fetish masks and gimp gear and
space wardrobes.
It's absolutely superb, and the time.
It's very much a 1960s story, isn't it? It's almost Austin Powers when it comes to all the. You got these really cool kind of sets where you got these zigzag lines, and it's very of its time, which I love. I think it's great.
Oh yeah, I mean it's very much of its time, and it's very sort of groovy looking.
Yeah.
That's it. And the performances are superb, and the Time Lords, when they make their appearance, they're scary.
Yeah.
They're not like the sort of fusty, sort of corrupt politicians that have appeared later. These are like really powerful, scary Time Lords. And you sort of you start to understand why the Doctor ran away, why he got away from this, because there's a point.
Why just sit and observe if you can go out and experience it?
Yeah, that's it. And it really, but that could have been, as far as I understand, that could have been the end of the show then, because they weren't too sure whether it was going to continue.
Yeah, I mean, as popular as Patrick Troughton is amongst Doctor Who fans, the ratings at the time weren't spectacular.
No, and it could have been an end, but then it's an ideal. Well, the following story, the first story of the Third Doctor, that's another jumping on point as well, because everything's different then.
It's a fresh start. Yeah, you start with a clean slate, so you don't necessarily have to know the backstory to be able to understand and appreciate the story.
Yeah, that's because this is a Third Doctor story. I had down Spearhead from Space as a sort of for a beginner, for someone new to Who, because, as you said, you don't need to know any prior knowledge. There's a couple of lines, there's the Brigadier is there, but there's a new Doctor, and it's a new series essentially. It's in color.
Yeah.
It's set on Earth. You could be watching a new, apart from the elements of like the TARDIS and the name Doctor Who and the music, it could be a totally different show. And I think it's a really good story, Spear from Space, because of the autons and, breaking, the famous scene of them breaking the shop dummies, smashing through the windows and shooting people and all of that.
It's written by Robert Holmes, who's kind of, within Doctor Who fandom, is kind of regarded as the best writer to have ever written for the show, pretty much.
He introduces so many elements that do come back. I mean, the autons have come back.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times now. What? In Terror of the Autons, in Rose, of course.
Yeah.
So that's why it might be of interest to new fans. And the Pandorica.
Pandorica opens, yeah.
Yeah, so we get the autons. So they were all, he created a new monster that sort of become iconic. And I just think that's a great story, and also because it's shot on film, because there was a
it looks fabulous.
It looks fabulous. Have you seen the? I don't have a Blu-ray player, but have you seen the Blu-ray?
I have. It's glorious.
Really?
It is stunning. Yeah, really superb.
I may have
best watch on a big screen. I don't have a massive TV screen, but it is really impressive. You can see the difference. They actually have in the extras, they have a comparison between the original DVD edition and the DVD special edition and then the Blu-ray edition, so you can see the improvement of the picture quality, and it is really, really good. It's
great. I remember I got it, I rented it from the library, on video cassette when it came out, and it was the unedited, it was the edited version, like omnibus version, where they took out all of the credit sequences and the end of episodes and made it one continuous story. Remember they used to do that with some of the videos. So I watched it like
they used to do that, didn't they?
Like a movie, like a pilot, essentially. And the first time I saw it like that, and it blew me away. It still does. What about you? What did you have for?
Well, I chose one from the same season. I thought Inferno would be quite an exciting one to throw into the pot.
Yeah,
it sums up that era for me, because you've got what makes the Third Doctor's era different from the others is, as you say, they're set on Earth. You've got this recurring cast of characters in the unit family as they become known.
Yeah,
and it's quite an interesting plot as well. You've got this whole thing of an alternate universe.
Yeah,
and how that plays out compared to our reality.
Yeah,
and I think it's quite an exciting story.
I had that down as well on the list because, I mean, on paper, it looks like quite a dull story.
Yeah.
About mining. Okay, they're mining to the Earth's core, and that releases this gas that transforms people into
green werewolf zombies.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what they are, and that goes on for a few episodes, and then
possibly John Levine's finest acting work there, I think.
Yeah. Acting might be going too far, but
right.
Sorry, that's terrible. But then midway through this whole thing of being transported to an alternate universe again.
Yeah.
That's something that probably wasn't done much at the time. That's something you'd imagine now because of series like Fringe or Sliders.
No, it's very ahead of its time in that respect.
Well ahead of its time.
I suppose you can imagine something like The Twilight Zone. I'm sure they've done that umpteen times. So I guess it wasn't that original, but within the context of Doctor Who, it was something that hadn't really been done too much before.
Hadn't been done, and so he winds up in this sort of fascist, pseudo-fascist version of Earth. The same mining operation is going on. You've still got these.
The tension in the story is really good. They do a great job of drawing out the tension. You feel when it comes to every cliffhanger. Because that's another thing, classic Who, that you don't get too much of in modern Who is the cliffhanger ending.
Yeah, exactly.
So if they're going to spread this out over anywhere between 4, 6, 7 weeks or whatever it might be, you've got to have some moment of peril at the end of the episode to want to draw the viewer back to watch it the next week.
Oh yeah,
and there's some great ones in this.
It really, I know that I hesitated a bit about this one because I thought, is it too long? And is it too stagey? Because a lot of it's set in that.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But no, on rewatching, there's so much in it, and it really just goes to show again what a weird show Doctor Who is and was. It's just crazy. I mean, It's very much of its time, the way it looks and everything, but it's absolutely brilliant. I'd recommend that heartily. There
are some great themes that run through that whole era. When Barry Letts was producing the programme, they brought in a lot of stories about ecology, and one of his real things that he was into was Buddhism, and so you get some of that coming through as well.
That's right,
So you get some really interesting stories, even if I may have possibly gone on record as saying John Pertwee is not my favourite Doctor.
I would agree with you. I have to admit, I like. I mean, I'd watch them, but he's the Doctor. I just feel cold to him. I've never warmed to him as the Doctor. I don't know if it's because of.
Well, that's the beauty of this programme, because for all the people like me and you who perhaps aren't so keen on John Pertwee, there will be another bunch of people who are absolutely smitten with him. He's their favourite Doctor. He's their ultimate Doctor, and it's great. I think it's that diversity is one of the things that I love about being in Doctor Who fandom.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's people who, if I said, I absolutely love the second Doctor, and there's people. I think there's like even friends like Warren from Radio Free Skaro, who doesn't like the first two Doctors. I think he's gone on record as saying that.
Yeah, he's not a big fan of 60s TV, I don't think.
He's not a big fan of 60s TV, whereas I absolutely love it. And that's the whole thing, it's the diversity of fandom. He has that opinion, I have an opposite opinion. He may love the third Doctor, I'm a bit cold to him. That's what's wonderful about it. And because it's so varied, it's a show that constantly reinvents itself.
And they tend to, when they cast a new Doctor, they tend to cast someone who's quite different from the predecessor. They don't try to ape the person who's gone before, and I think that is probably more stark in the next Doctor than perhaps any other Doctor.
Oh yeah.
Before or since. You've got the incomparable, madcap, crazy, scary Tom Baker.
Scary, and I would say the Doctor, maybe not the darkest Doctor, but the one most you could imagine killing. You could imagine that he would kill someone, or he would.
I mean, I say scary, but having said that, as a kid, he was my Doctor. That was the first person I saw playing the Doctor when I was a kid. So I grew up in the 70s. So I would have been about 6 when I started watching it. But you always felt safe.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing with Doctor Who. It's renowned for being like a kid's show that gives you... I mean, people assume it's sci-fi. I don't really see it as a sci-fi. There's futuristic elements to it. It's more of a fantasy program.
Absolutely.
And certainly during his time on the show, they went a lot further down the road for scares. I mean, obviously in the past they achieved, some kind of scary quota by having the likes of the Daleks and stuff, which were, pretty creepy for their time. I'm sure people who'd never seen anything like that before would have freaked right out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But certainly within that era, they really ramp up the scares, but you always felt safe with him. So although I would be sitting on the floor, my parents would be on the sofa watching, my older brother would be sat with them, and then I gradually sort of edged closer and closer to the sofa as things got more and more scary. And then I'd be on the sofa with the cushion just for a bit of extra protection. But it always felt safe, it was a safe scare. It was because I loved being scared as a kid. I think that's one of the things that attracted me to the program.
Kids love, but you know something? I used to be scared by his face in the title sequence.
Right, okay, yeah.
That was it. Now, I was born in 1979, so and he left in 1981.
Yeah,
81. So I don't really have any clear memories of it, but I do have a very early memory of it. Must be the season 18.
Yeah.
The music and the title sequence, and that scared me. I don't know why. That the face, the music and the face on the screen. I don't know why he had a sort of scary face for a very young child. I do remember that.
And he served the longest of all of the guys to have played the Doctor so far. So it's quite
eight
in
years?
some respects is I think it was it 7 years?
7 years. What would you say would be the best story to watch for?
Oh my goodness!
There's so many different eras within his.
Yeah, because if you look at it, I kind of define it as 3 separate chunks that make up his time on the show. You've got the very early stuff, with what a lot of people see as the dream lineup, which is
Sarah and Harry.
Yeah, and also the production side of things as well. You've got Philip Hinchcliffe as the producer, and you've got Robert Holmes, the script editor.
Yeah.
So they go for a sort of gothic take on Doctor Who, and then you move into the Graham Williams era where they go a bit more for the sort of comedic side of things and more fantasy. And then you go into the final part, which is the beginning of JNT's take on the show, which goes much more for a more serious approach to it.
Yeah.
I mean, an obvious one, which I've championed many, many times, is City of Death.
Yes, that's my favourite one.
Yeah. One argument against it, I suppose, is that it's quite different from a lot of the stuff around it. So if you watch that for the first time, expecting everything to be like that, you would be probably a little bit disappointed.
Yes, that's it.
But it is a glorious, glorious story.
When watched in isolation, it's incredible, and it really, I think, it serves as a sort of a template. I think you said this before somewhere, but it serves as a template for the new series a lot. The humor, there's an undertone of romance between the Doctor and it's quite clear actually. The humor.
Well, in reality, they were having a sort of romantic. A kind of side to their lives, weren't they?
Yeah, they're bigger on the inside. There's all of that, and it's really, that was Douglas Adams, written by Douglas Adams.
Oh yeah, I love Douglas Adams.
And I mean, it's just a crazy story. I would say, like, for a new, that's some. If I was showing an episode to someone who hadn't seen classic Who before, I'd show them that from the Tom Baker era, because I just think they'll get.
It's got the lot. You've got a great cast. You've got a really cracking story. The music is something a little bit different because Dudley Simpson was the composer, and he had a house style which was, you could pretty much go from one story to the next, and
it was lovely.
It would sound fairly similar, but this had a real different tone to it. The fact that it's filmed on location in Paris as well, so it's got that sort of epic quality to it from that. Julian Glover is a fantastic villain.
Yes, he's brilliant.
I forget the name of his wife in the show.
She plays Lady, not Lady. Yes, I know what you mean. But she's really good. Yes,
she's very good, and there's some beautiful dialogue.
Yeah, that's the one that I think Gareth Roberts is now novelizing.
Yes, that's right.
There's never been a novelization of it.
No.
Officially, anyway, and because he did stunning work with Shada, which was was supposed to be the story after that, which I think may have been much in the same tone. Douglas Adams,
I think so.
Which is a pity it's never been made or made properly anyway.
Yeah.
Best not go into that.
But, I don't know what you mean.
No.
But no, I think it's just a great all-rounder. It's a perfect story. I think there's a few others that I would certainly point people in the direction of. I think The Horror of Fang Rock is a really good story.
That's properly scary.
Yeah. It's got the atmosphere of a sort of gothic horror. It's on a remote location.
Yeah.
You've got a very sort of quite a small cast, and they're trapped in this lighthouse.
Yeah.
And it's being invaded by perhaps not the most convincing alien, but there are some really nice horror moments in there. Some really creepy moments.
It really it scares the pants of you, and the doctor. The way Tom Baker plays the Doctor in that story, there's something, I don't know, not sinister about him, but something almost
kind of brooding,
and like he's relishing it a little bit. Some of the lines he said, "What is it? We're all going to die." There's some famous line anyway. He says, "Well, we're all going to die," or something like that, and he's enjoying it. Okay, he looks very serious and everything, but and. I mean, the story before that as well was Talons of Weng Chiang.
Weng Chiang, yeah. I mean, it's a stone cold classic as well.
It's a classic. I don't know whether I would. I did have that down originally on the list, but I don't know whether that would play well to someone who hadn't seen Doctor Who before, because it's very much of its time. Not just in terms of, the sort of 70s gothic, hammer horror. I mean, it's brilliant. I love all that. Some of the racial elements of it are a bit ropey, but then again, that's of its time. I mean, we can't.
I think we tend to be a bit forgiving of old sort of stories and just kind of view them as they were meant for the time.
They were,
which maybe is not the way to do it, but I really rate that story. I think it's a great story.
I love it. And as well, you're talking about in Horror of Fang Rock, a slightly unconvincing monster. Well, in Talons of Weng Chiang, you've got the big rat.
The cute, cuddly rat.
Which is just slightly embarrassing. But then you've got Jake.
If they just lit it slightly differently, it would have been perfect.
Or just showed the mouth, or did it from the rat's point of view, from the seeing it through the eyes of the rat or something. I don't know, but it's that. But no, Horror of Fang Rock, I reckon that's one to show people, and City of Death, and maybe Pyramids of Mars, but I don't know if I'm just saying that because it's popular. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as we said, it's really hard to sort of pick a few out of that whole era because there are so many.
So diverse. State of Decay. No, I don't know if I'd show Legopolis is great, but it's...
Well, it's interesting because it's a regeneration story. It's also... It's got a different tone to it. I'm not sure it was the best send-off they could have had for Tom, but... it's part of the mythos now. Yeah,
it's just a bit too scientific. Not scientific. There's too much jargon, and it's sort of a bit alienating. I
think they were going for for that kind of take on the program at that point.
Hard
they were going for a more
sci-fi.
serious, more for a more serious take on it and try and cut out some of the humour.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's of interest, I guess, if you want to see how the transition works. And you've got arguably one of the most popular Doctors on his swan song, so it's worth a look. You've got the Master as well.
Yeah.
Who's a pretty key character through the classic series, on and off.
But also as you said, you could pick anything from Tom Baker's reign and show it to, some you wouldn't, absolutely, like Underworld, yes.
Actually, in fairness, apart from they were working on a shoestring budget, apart from some of the effects which aren't stellar, I think the story is kind of fun.
Yeah, it's all fun. There's something there. There's never a dull moment with Tom Baker. Whenever he's on the screen playing the Doctor, it's always brilliant and enjoyable. And that's why.
And Louise Jameson is a great actress as well. I think she deserves a lot of credit. She's very
brilliant.
Good.
And maybe we'll get onto this afterwards, but when they've reunited for Big Finish, Louise Jameson and Tom Baker, it's just been superb. Really...
Also, The Key to Time is quite a nice little set, because you've got that kind of running theme to go through it. So if you wanted to really go into it big style, you've got that
story arc
as a sort of standalone story arc which you could follow, and it's got the beautiful Mary Tam.
Something for the dads, so it...
Who is a really good actress as well.
She's brilliant.
Sadly missed.
So
I think that would be another good choice, possibly.
Yeah. There's so much with Tom Baker, I just realised. You just show anything.
It's so hard to choose.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, then we have to move on to Peter Davison, who takes over as the Fifth Doctor.
Yes. It was.
How did you find this one, choosing a story?
I find it hard.
Yeah?
I find it...
There's a few really key stories, in my opinion. You've got something like Kinder, which is fairly early on in his take on the Doctor, and I think that's quite an interesting story because they don't go for an obvious kind of bringing back an old monster. They go for this it's quite a high concept in a lot of ways. You've got this whole thing of a lot of it goes on within it's kind of internalized. It's within one of the characters' minds, albeit for the lack of a bit of budget. And I think it's hard for them to visualize the sort of big monster, in inverted commas, at the end of the story, because there was no real way for them to be able to do it convincingly at the time. They didn't have CG in the way that we do now.
No,
but I think if you give the story a go on its merits, I think it's very good.
Oh, it's brilliant! It's absolutely brilliant.
And sorry, I was going to say the guest cast is superb.
That wonderful actor.
You've got Richard Todd
from Dam Busters.
And you've also got Simon Rouse, who is just stunning. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, he does the most amazing, crazy acting. He's banana pants crazy. He really goes for it.
That's what I love in some of the classic, the over the top crazy acting that they're very theatrical.
You can't
again.
mend people. Brilliant, love it.
That is a good story.
I mean, did you have any choices that you felt would be
right? Well, I'm going to be very safe. I chose the 5 Doctors.
Yeah, and that's nice because you're kind of getting a look at the characters interacting, these different Doctors, and it gives you a little taster of what those Doctors are like, possibly.
That's what I mean, as a jumping on point. And Peter Davison is the sort of, because he's the current Doctor at that time, and it's his story, and he's the hero, and he's got some wonderful moments in it. I suppose because it's the story I've seen the most of the Fifth Doctor. I like Enlightenment.
Yeah. Again, it's got some really interesting concepts.
Yeah, it's just I don't know whether somebody who's attuned to New Who or somebody who'd never seen the show before would particularly enjoy it. But then it's got that weird mix. Yeah, sort of. It's not a pseudo historic. It's weird. It's like it's a weird mix of historical with futuristic with
I
gods.
think if you've got someone who's watched the new series for some time, I think probably their minds might be open to exploring classic Who, and I think there are some kind of crossovers between what they're doing now and what they did back then, albeit with a different kind of visual flair.
That's it.
So I think they could. I think there's certainly an audience for it who could probably take something from it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a through line from Enlightenment to, say, obvious example, The Curse of the Black Spot, or anything else where you've sort of got a mixture of old technology,
kind of historical and science, kind of clashing.
like Girl in the Fireplace, that kind of thing. There's a through line, so that could be appealing.
I mean, the obvious one to choose, really, is the one that topped the 200 poll in Doctor Who magazine a few years ago, which was Peter Davison's final story, and arguably for a lot of people his best story, which is The Caves of Androzani.
Yeah, that's really. It's so different though from the rest. From everything that follows it. I mean, it's a bit like City of Death in that respect. If you watch that in isolation, wonderful. But then if that was the first Peter Davison story you watched, and then watch some of the preceding stories, you might be very disappointed.
I think one of the reasons it worked so well was because it was so different from what had gone before.
Yeah.
And sadly, I think they tried to carry that on to the following season, and it didn't
work.
Pan out. But I think it's, from minute one, he's action Doctor.
Oh, God,
because Peter Davison, I think, is a really good actor.
He's wonderful.
But I think perhaps his interpretation, because Tom had been so big and boisterous, he wanted to calm it down and play a more sort of, I suppose, a more human Doctor.
Yeah.
A more sort of calm Doctor.
Heroic.
But he pulls out all the stops. He really is action hero from minute one.
Yeah.
And it's a great story.
It's his finest
and
performance.
A brilliant send-off.
Yeah. It's finest performance as the Doctor, and it just sums him up, the sacrifice that he makes. There's that wonderful moment when they realize that I don't want to spoil it, but when they realize, the Doctor and Perry realize they've got something that is probably going to kill them, and is it not Philip Glenister, Robert Glenister tells him that, and he starts laughing or giggling manically. That bit, it's really chilling bit in it.
Yeah.
I never forget. And I just, even of course it's his last story, he regenerates it at the end. That's sinister. It's a scary regeneration. The way it's filmed, that's a great story. I can see why it tops so many polls. It isn't my favorite. It wouldn't even be in my top 10 favorite Doctor Who stories, but I do, as representative of the Fifth Doctor's run, I'd say it's probably the best. That and the Five Doctors. Unless you've any other choices for the fifth.
No, I think that sums it up. I mean, everyone will have their favourites, so apologies if we didn't mention your favourite.
I do have another Fifth Doctor favourite, but it's not on TV. But maybe we'll come to that.
Okay, all right. So if we move on to Colin Baker, the Sixth Doctor. A tricky one.
It's tricky because I don't know, where do you start? I don't know. Twin dilemmas. No, I wouldn't show that to anyone.
Well, yeah. Maybe I'm sad, but I can watch it.
Oh, I can watch it, but it looks very, I suppose because it looks so 80s and it's so garish and it's so there's annoying characters in it. Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know.
If you look at something like Attack of the Cybermen, it's very weighed down by exposition and trying to fit in as much of sort of past stories as they possibly
continuity heavy story.
Yeah, it's kind of a dynamic sort of thriller in its own way.
Yep.
Bit on the violent side, particularly at the end.
Yes.
One of the listeners to the Blue Box podcast called Mark Whiteley wrote in and asked what story would we recommend to show his 3-year-old son. And obviously, if you watch enough of the Colin Baker era, because Eric Sayward was very fond of lots of violence, it's a really hard one to pick. And I think in the end, we ended up going for the Twin Dilemma because it was the sort of the least scary.
Yeah, it's kid friendly. True. That is. It's kid friendly. Yeah. It is a bit like a 1980s kids program, the Twin Dilemma, like a kids show. What was it? Teabag. Remember that?
Grot bags?
No. What was it? It was Teabag or Tea Leaf. She was a woman, and there was a little boy who went with her, and there was it was like a kids sort of science fiction show around the time.
Maybe I must have missed that. I was probably too old for that.
It seemed a bit like that, the Twin Dilemma anyway, the same sort of sets. But no, Attack of the Cybermen maybe, because it's I know all the continuity stuff and it's really heavy, but it's a dynamic story. A lot happens, and I
quite like the Mysterious Planet from the season after that.
Yes,
it's a Robert Holmes, so you're in fairly safe hands. There's some nice little sort of plot twists and things.
You could watch. I would recommend that to someone if it didn't have the trial thing.
Yeah, it makes it really hard for anyone who's trying to. If you're a casual viewer coming into it, it's a big ask really, because you've got this whole, effectively a 14-part story. But in isolation, I think if you can watch it as the story, then I think it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But
it's a very doctorish moment. There's a great doctorish moment in that in the Mysterious Planet when I won't spoil it, but when a discovery is made, somebody makes a discovery, and the Doctor's reaction to it and his companion's reaction to it are. It's just a joy to watch. It's a very doctorish moment. You see the human side. Do you know the bit I'm talking about when?
Yeah.
A discovery is made. I won't say more than that to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
I think he was a bit unfortunate because of the politics at the BBC at the time. I don't think the person in charge at the very top of the BBC really liked Doctor Who and was really that bothered about it carrying on.
Yeah.
So I think they set up a lot of stuff early on that really couldn't get paid off because of what was going on. So I think he got a bit of a raw deal, but I think he managed to redeem himself later when it came to the audio stuff for Big Finish.
Absolutely.
So I think he got his moment to shine from that.
They say that Colin Baker really is the Big Finish Doctor. I mean, he's the one who's really had the chance to shine on the audios on Big Finish. That's not to say that he doesn't have great moments he does have some really great moments during his run. He just wasn't given the chance. I wonder if he was given another crack of the whip an extra season. Can you imagine what it would have been like if you'd had Colin Baker but with Cartmel as the script editor? I think that might have been quite an interesting especially the dark Doctor elements, when they were sort of brought. Sometimes you play these little mind games with yourself trying to imagine an alternate history of the show, and if this had happened and that had happened, and what would it have been like in Time in the Rani.
I think that's another good choice actually. If I had to try and pick one out.
Right, okay.
Oh, no, not... what am I talking?
Mark of the Rani or Time of the Rani?
Mark of the Rani. Sorry, what was I saying? No.
I know. I
shoot me now.
I panicked for a moment there.
Mark of the Rani for a Colin Baker one is... I think it's something a bit different from what goes on around it, because it's a historical, but kind of pseudo-historical.
Yeah.
And it's less gratuitous in its violence. You've got some perhaps not quite so special effects in one particular sequence.
No.
But some nice character stuff going on with the Doctor and the Master and the Rani. I think it's a fun story. So I think that possibly might be a contender for a good Colin Baker story to watch.
It's accessible. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But Time of the Rani, no. I mean,
yeah.
if we're getting into the seventh,
I'd like to try and forget that one existed. Really.
I think even the people who participated in it, the actors would rather it didn't exist. Yeah. I mean, I remember watching it, being really excited about the new Doctor and everything, and I was so disappointed at the time. I was so disappointed. But for the seventh Doctor, there are some great stories.
There are. I think he's quite underrated in some respects. I know you mentioned Warren before. He's not a fan of 60s Doctor Who. He's very much not a fan of Sylvester McCoy's Doctor Who. I don't think he's got anything against Sylvester McCoy.
Oh no, because he's himself. He loves the actor and I don't think.
I just think he's not enamoured with that period in the show's
I can
history.
see why a little bit. He wasn't well served. There was no money. They were under a lot of pressure. But there's some gems that come out of it. I mean,
and I think as time goes on, the show definitely starts to get back to where it had been before.
Yes. I mean, one of the ones I picked, I suppose this is in reverse order, but as a jumping on point for a new fan, Survival came to mind. I know that people say there's a lot of flaws in it, especially some of the costume design and whatever, but as a template for the new series, you can see the connection between Survival and Rose.
I have to say I've never been a big fan of the cheetah people costumes, but again, like a lot of classic stuff, if you can overlook some of the budgetary problems
and trying to imagine,
you can find some really good story underneath it all.
It's really, and it's quite an adult story, Survival.
Yeah.
And quite brutal in parts. And the Master, it's the last appearance of Anthony Ainley as the Master, and it's the last story of what we call classic Who. It's just I don't know. It's a great stepping on point. It's only three episodes, or is it 4? No, it's 3 episodes.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah,
and it's Earth-based for a lot of it, and you get a lot of weirdness, especially like cheetah people on horses running through a kid's playground in Perryvale. I mean, it's weird. And
I mean, you get to see a bit more of, I suppose, what you call real life.
Yes.
As in, you've got council estates, you've got the local shop, you've got the youth clubs, that sort of stuff. So it's a bit more grounded in reality.
Yeah, that's what.
And I think that's where a lot of people feel they can draw a comparison between what Russell T Davies did in the sort of Revive series.
Yeah, exactly. There's a line. I always think it's a tip of the hat to Survival. There's a line in Rose. I don't know if you remember it, where I think Jackie talks about cat flap, where those bleeding bloody cats getting in or something like that. And I always think, that's a bit of a like a tip of hat to the last televised story. I don't know. I like to think that anyway. I mean,
I love Ghostlight from the Seventh Doctor's era, but I wouldn't really recommend it to someone looking to sort of watch that period for the first time, because it's hard going in one respect, because there are certain flaws there, sort of not in the script as such, but the fact they've had to condense down what is effectively a 4-part story into a 3-part story. But I've got a real soft spot for that one.
I love the look at it, the look of it, and the sort of overall feel. The atmosphere. It's very gothic gloom.
Yeah.
It's all studio based, of course, but that's what the BBC do well. Period.
Oh yeah, period drama is their sort of food and drink, and it looks fantastic.
Oh yeah.
It looks $1 million on screen. You get to see a really sumptuous looking set design.
Yeah,
it does look
good.
And
a very sumptuous looking Sophie Aldred as well, if I remember.
Oh yeah. But she likes to sort of change her outfit a few times during that.
Yes, I remember enjoying that at the time as well. It scared the hell out of me, that story. I think it's at the end of episode 1 when the creature comes out of the.
Oh yeah.
I remember being terrified because I had to wait a week to find out. Because I really loved Ace. And I really identified with it. And I thought, oh, she's going to die. But remember when you used to have that feeling when you watched Doctor Who? You really thought you felt for the companions. And, of course, now we know they're never going to die. Nothing bad's going to happen.
Well, sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do. But sometimes back then when you...
Rest in peace, Adric.
Well...
Anyway, moving on. I think the obvious representative one for Sylvester McCoy really is Remembrance of the Daleks. I think that's
brilliant,
nailed on, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that's.
If you look at everything around it, it's got all those things that you want from a Doctor Who story.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're going back to Coal Hill where it all began, which is kind of a nice little wink to the long-term fans. You've got Daleks, you've got two factions of Daleks, so you've got this whole sort of civil war going on.
Yeah, you've got the pseudo unit,
that's right,
military,
Chunky
Gilmore and Rachel,
and the gorgeous Pamela Salem.
Oh yeah, goodness me!
Doing a bit of a Barbara, I think, with the old beehive hairdo.
That has to be deliberate, doesn't it?
I think so.
It has to be deliberate. And it's just a great story. It stands up well even now. I mean, you watch that now, and I don't think it's aged all that much. Okay, there's a couple of ropey effects when the Daleks sort of explode and whatever, and they're a bit wobbly. And
I think they fitted different tires to the underside of the Daleks, and they were a little bit sort of wobbling from side to side.
But you can forgive it all that because the story is so great, and it adds an extra layer of mythos to the character.
Yeah, because they're kind of retconning the first Doctor, kind of setting up quite a different take on what he was doing on Earth at the very beginning. So it totally changes your conception of what you thought the Doctor was.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is quite clever.
It's really... I know that a lot of elements in that season 25 and season 26 went on to be developed further in the novels, the New Adventures. There's underlying dark history of the Doctor, and maybe he was more than he said he was, and that's been explored as well in the new series. And so you start to see the beginnings of that in Remembrance of the Daleks, and there's a lot for everyone in that story.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously for Paul McGann's Eighth Doctor, televisual wise, it's fairly slim pickings.
Well,
until yesterday,
and I would say the Night of the Doctor.
Yeah, I mean the TV movie, it's flawed. It's flawed. There's some nice bits in it. It looks stunning on the screen. It's beautifully directed. And the actors do a good job. I think Paul McGann is a really likeable actor. I like him a lot. I think he makes a great Doctor.
Yeah.
I just don't think the script really stood up to it.
No.
Sadly.
If they'd introduced him like they introduced him in Night of the Doctor. Imagine that's how the TV movie had began. Someone in peril, Paul McGann turns up and says, "I'm the Doctor."
Yeah,
it could have been, but anyway, we can dream about that. But
I mean, back then you think, oh yeah, it's obvious they're going to have Sylvester McCoy because he's got to regenerate. Yeah. But now, looking back on it, you think, oh, why on earth did they do that?
Yeah, and confused. It opens. You see the TARDIS flying through space. Then it cuts to this man sitting in a room, and unless you're a Doctor Who fan, you've no idea that this is inside this police box. There's no. It's a shame, but I mean, Paul McGann, I think, has gone on, especially in the audios. He's really come into his own.
Dark Eyes is
magnificent.
I think the pinnacle of what he's done. I think there's some other good ones like things like Chimes of Midnight, but I think Dark Eyes,
Chimes of Midnight,
as a little set, I think is quite nice.
And there's one I think it's set before Dark Eyes. It's called To the Death, and Lucy Miller.
Okay.
It's Sheridan Smith plays his companion Lucy, and it's sort of, you start to see the beginnings of, or they hint at the beginnings of the Time War, and it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal, and very reminiscent of a Russell T Davies end of season. Sort of throw everything at it. It's got Daleks. It's got the meddling monk.
Yeah.
And it this time played by Graham Garden. From I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue and the Goodies. So sort of continuing the Peter Butterworth comedy actor thing. To the Death. It's a brilliant Doctor Who story. Even if you hadn't listened to any other of the preceding 8th Doctor audios in that series, you listen to that alone. It's shocking. It's brilliant. I think Nicholas Briggs wrote it, and he was maybe aping the style of the TV series, and it comes across clearly. But Dark Eyes, I would say, is the continuation of that, and that is absolutely superb. Yeah,
I think the dynamic between the 8th Doctor and Molly, I think, is really nice. And it got some really nice little twists in there. I think the opening story, I think, is probably the strongest one in my opinion, where they go back to World War One, and you've got this whole mystery going on of sci-fi shenanigans in there, and I think it's a really strong story.
It's really very good. You've got Toby Jones in it as well, and
he's brilliant. I think Big Finish is such a huge volume of work. It's really hard.
I think there's more stories of Big Finish, Doctor Stories, than there were of the classic series now. I think by now
that
there
probably wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I love them. I think they're great. I think it's a real labour of love. I think Nick Briggs and Gary Russell and Jason Haig-Ellery and all those people who got that together, I think a lot of what they did helped to bring back the programme to the screen. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for keeping it going during those years where it wasn't on TV.
Absolutely.
And I love them. I think they're great.
There's some great ones.
The quality can be a bit up and down, but I think on the whole they're very good.
It depends what... Some things, I think, don't translate well to audio, don't come across well in audio. You know, the sort of traditional sort of... I know the Daleks are used a lot in Big Finish because, of course, Nicholas Briggs is the voice of the Daleks. It's hard. I mean, I listen to a lot of radio. I love radio. I've written for radio, and I know the way it works. But as you said, some of the quality is up and down, especially in some of the Dalek stories. I find the Daleks a bit boring on audio. Unless you see them and hear them, it's hard to. But Dark Eyes is an exception to that. They're properly scary in that.
Yeah.
And there's a Sixth Doctor story called Jubilee.
Oh, yeah. That is another banana pants crazy one, isn't it?
It's absolutely crazy. It's crazy. It's scary.
That's Rob Shearman, isn't it?
Rob Shearman. They say sort of acted as the template for Dalek, written by Rob Shearman, and there are quite a few parallels.
There are elements in there, but it's quite a different story.
It's brutal.
Martin Jarvis is rather good in that.
Oh, good. And Rosalind Ayres, I think they're a real life married couple. And you've got the Sixth Doctor and an older companion, whose name for the moment escapes me. Evelyn
Smythe.
Evelyn Smythe. She's an audio companion, and it's absolutely superb. And if you listen to that, you know that's a brilliant Sixth Doctor story. And I would put that up there above any of the televisual ones that he did.
I think he really comes to his best in the Big Finish audios. I think.
Oh, he's great. And there's another one, Sixth Doctor one called Davros. I don't know if you...
I've not heard that one.
I won't say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but it's the Sixth Doctor and Davros and...
you spoilt it.
Ah!
I didn't know Davros was in Davros.
I know. No, it's actually about this guy called Dave Ross.
Okay,
and, he's just like problem filling his tax form, and the doctor comes.
Sounds thrilling.
Yeah, it's really good. But the Fifth Doctor, see, this is when earlier on we were talking about the Fifth Doctor, and I mentioned that one of my favorite Fifth Doctor stories isn't even a televisual one; it's an audio one. It's Spare Parts, which.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Genesis of the Cybermen, I suppose. It is.
Yeah. So I'm still waiting for them to do something. I know they had the David Tennant two-parter, which kind of gave them an alternate history, but I think the way they've done it on Spare Parts was so cleverly done.
Oh my goodness! And such a multi-layered world was created. You know, it's set on Mondas, without giving too much away, which is Earth's twin planet, and sort of a 1950s style type of era on Mondas. You know, it's sort of like but he's created this whole universe, the culture, the people. It's very realistic. You identify with the characters.
Yeah.
And when the cyber, I mean, it's obviously about the creation and the birth of the Cybermen, but there's some chilling, horrible moments in that stay with you. And the Fifth Doctor is Peter Davison is incredible in that story.
I think the only thing that might put off someone new to it would be possibly the choice of going with the original voice for the Cybermen, which I actually quite like.
The sort of spooky voice, it speaks like this.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, well, it's sort of, it's a bit Frank Spencer.
A little bit, but you kind of go with it, and it's
quite scary.
You said there are some really freaky moments in it.
It's an unnerving voice. It may sound a bit silly to modern ear, but it's unnerving, especially when you watch the 10th Planet and those Cybermen, which I absolutely love, the original cloth-faced, everything. But
there's something truly spooky about them. I don't think... I mean, I quite like the Troughton ones as well, the various iterations of those, and even the 80s ones were kind of cool. But... there's something quite spooky about seeing the eyes behind the cloth mask.
Yeah, and you imagine damaged skin underneath.
It's quite unsettling.
Yeah, unsettling, that's the word. And Spare Parts is unsettling. And I think it's... If you had this... For the Fifth Doctor, I'd say Spare Parts. For the Sixth, I would say Jubilee. I don't know if you've any other preferences, any other...
Oh, I quite like. I don't know if you've heard. There's a Fifth Doctor one called The Kingmaker by Nev Fountain.
Yes, I have heard that.
That's really good fun. It's a bit of a romp, historical romp.
Nev Fountain's brilliant because he's essentially is a comedy writer, but it's not. It's a romp, but it's really well done. It's a real. You could imagine that one on TV.
Yeah, so if you ever wanted to know what happened to the princes in the tower and Richard III and all that kind of stuff, then listen to that one and you'll find out.
Yeah, I could see that translating well to TV.
There's a really good companion that they introduced for the audios called Erimem, who I think is quite a good foil for the Doctor.
She's an Egyptian
queen. Is it, or empress or something like that.
That's right, yeah.
And her and Perry, I think, work quite well together as well.
Oh yeah,
they kind of chum up quite well, don't they?
Yeah, it's sort of set in the gap. Some of the Fifth Doctor stories are set in the gap between Planet of Fire and Caves of Androzani, and Perry's good in the audios. There's one. It's a companion chronicle with Perry. It's called Perry and the Pescon Paradox, or the
I've heard of that one. I haven't actually listened to it.
It's really good. I'd urge you to seek that one. That's by Nev Fountain as well, who I think is Nicola Bryant's partner.
Yeah, that's right.
Lucky Nev. And he's on my Facebook. You might hear that. It's absolutely superb. Any other ones? Would you have for like the Seventh Doctor?
Actually, there's quite a good one called Night Thoughts, which is a Seventh Doctor story.
I haven't heard that one.
It's quite spooky. It's Seventh Doctor and Ace, and it's set on this remote Scottish island, and it's a kind of haunted house sort of story with weird goings on, and I don't want to give away too much of the plot really for spoilers, but it's very atmospheric, very spooky. Audio doesn't always translate to horror very well, but this one is very good. I forget who the author is, but that's definitely a good one. I would say
there's some really great writers for Big Finish. I mean, Paul Mars, and Nev Fountain and Mark Platt.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stuff that they've come up with. I mean,
John Dorney's another one as well. Dorney, he's a very good writer.
Superb. And Nicholas Briggs, of course, because he did the recent. I don't want to spoil this for anyone because it's just come out a few weeks ago. But the 50th anniversary story.
The Light at the End.
The Light at the End, which you've listened to.
I've heard it. Yeah. Shall we give a little spoiler warning now? So if you want to, pause and come back to us later once you've listened to it.
Yes, do spoiler warning because it's superb.
I loved it. I thought it was a great kiss to the fans. I think it's very difficult. I think Nick Briggs did a great job of getting all the doctors, giving them equal kind of airtime, if you like.
Yeah, they all get their moment to shine.
Yeah. And my God, they threw everything as far as, past companions and the kitchen sink into that, didn't they? They had, Jamie, you had Annika Wills as Polly, you had all these various people coming back.
Zoe, Sarah
just
Kingdom,
for tiny little cameos.
Tegan.
Mm-hmm. And we mentioned John Dorney earlier, the writer, but he also has an acting pedigree as well, and he's in that story as the poor unfortunate chap who loses his family.
The sort of the bookend character. The we hear him at the start, and we hear that's John Dorn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that's John Dorney.
And I think the little boy is Nicholas Briggs' son. I mean,
that's right.
I suppose because we've given a spoiler warning, we can say some of it. The pair up between the 8th Doctor and the 4th Doctor, between McGann and Baker, just works perfectly.
You put two Scousers together, it's bound to give you something.
I didn't even think of that yet. They bounce off each other so well.
They do.
And I think it's the 6th and 7th work well together. And Peter Davison, he's just brilliant. And also, this is the big spoiler, we hear the first 3 Doctors as well, which I didn't expect.
Yes.
That was a surprise to me.
Yeah. No, I thought they did a fantastic job. I think they've really stepped up their game, even in the last year or two. I think they have really gone out their way to try and give their audience what they want. The way it's been marketed, I think it's been very good. You've got the various versions, so you got a straightforward download version, or you can go for the special edition, which has got a load of VAM or extras, whatever you want to call them, which I'm a sucker for. So I went for that one
as well. With the documentaries
which I really enjoyed. And there's even a vinyl version as well, which is pretty cool.
If I had the money, I'd get that.
And also I think it's available as a 5.1 version.
Oh yeah, stereos, not stereoscopic,
surround
sound.
Yeah, which would be pretty cool. I've ditched my surround sound setup, which I'm a bit upset about now because I would have liked to have linked that up and heard it in surround sound.
Because there's so much. I mean, you mentioned there, the past companions. There's a sequence in it, without spoiling too much, where I think it's Charlie, the 8th Doctor's companion, sort of goes through time inside the TARDIS and essentially meets every companion.
Yeah.
For a brief second, she interacts with.
I love the interplay between her and Leela. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that wonderful. It works so well, and you've got the master in it. Jeffrey Reavers is the master, and at the end, when all the Doctors, I'm not going to spoil it, when all the Doctors come together and just pull off this audacious sort of screw you to the master, it's wonderful. It's just a moment of joy. I don't think it was. Well, I don't know. I know some of them recorded together, and I don't know how it was done logistically, but I know that McGann and Baker were in the studio together.
Yes, that's right.
And some of the others were. It was all about. It's absolutely perfect. I recommend them.
Yeah, so hats off to them. I think they did a great job, and I think they deserve a lot of plaudits for what they've done.
Yeah, 50th anniversary year. I tell you what, the best time to start becoming a Doctor Who fan or start getting into
what
them.
a year.
Yeah, we've got everything. We're spoiled, absolutely spoiled, and people moan and groan, and I don't know what they want. Sometimes, you sort of, you've got everything from books, we said earlier, from books, audio, TV, all these documentaries, even the trailer for the 50th, not the Day of the Doctor trailer, but I think you've talked about this in the Blue Box podcast, but I mean, that labor of love.
It's beautiful, isn't it? I went to see Gravity at the cinema, and they had that in 3D, and that was pretty stunning.
It was in
one of the trailers.
It was in the cinema, and my word! Oh, I wouldn't. I want to see Gravity anyway, but if I know the trailers before that, I definitely. Oh, it's just beautiful, and there's so many. I've watched it maybe 7 or 8 times and freeze framed it and looked for screen.
Yeah, and every time you find something new to find in there, don't you? It's just packed with.
It's packed with
beautiful
stuff,
little Easter eggs in
there. And
there.
in light of the Night of the Doctor, the Paul McGann episode, something now makes sense in that trailer that didn't before.
Okay.
We go through all the Doctors, and then right in front of Tennant, I think there's this figure crouched over with a black belt, with a belt, like a white shirt, and we only see the back of his head. Some people have said it was Captain Jack. Someone said it was someone else.
Yeah.
Somebody
said they thought it was the brigade leader from Inferno, which I could kind of see. But I think having seen that, I think you're right. I didn't even think of that.
I think it's a young version or a version of the John Hurt War Doctor, the War Doctor, or whatever he's going to be called, the Warrior, the I don't know. It's really exciting.
So I think we've covered pretty much all the classics there, haven't we? I think maybe we won't stray into New Who, because I think that's still relatively fresh. So I think people might find that a bit easier to get into, possibly. But if you're looking to get into classic Who, I think
we've covered
it deserves a look.
It deserves a look, and there is so much out there. I mean, we've given our choices, but somebody else will tell you something completely different. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. And I know some people have. The way I see it is the what we now call the classic series and New Who. I see it as just one series.
Yeah.
And it's my personal opinion that it's never been better than it is now. I mean, Doctor Who at the moment is just wonderful. It's the standard of the stories, even some of the ones that are less fondly regarded. I mean, you put something like, I'm sorry to say this, but Love and Monsters up against, let's see, The Time Monster. Okay, they both got monster in the title. I tell you what, I go for Love and Monsters.
Well, our mutual friend J.R. Southall does tend to recommend The Time Monster as the ultimate story to introduce a new fan to.
Really?
And the reason he says that is his partner is not a Doctor Who fan, so she has to suffer watching lots of old 70s stuff that she probably wouldn't necessarily want to watch. And she absolutely loved The Time Monster. They all sat there and laughed their heads off and howled at it.
Right.
And I think it depends on how you go into it. If you're going into it to take it seriously, yes, I would probably agree. But I think if you just want
a bit of fun,
a few hours of fun and entertainment, so like you said before, what you may not appreciate, somebody else
different
does.
Strokes for different folks. That's it.
Go and seek it out, guys.
Yeah, Time Monster. I don't know. Yeah.
So, Dec, just before we wrap up, what would you like to recommend for our listeners? Have you enjoyed anything in the cinema or on TV or books-wise that you'd like to recommend?
There are a few things. Well, television-wise, okay, I know it doesn't necessarily go under it's not necessarily science fiction or fantasy. There was a series on called Ambassadors, with Mitchell and
Oh,
Webb.
is that the David Mitchell
David
thing?
Mitchell and Robert Webb, which is really,
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyable. It was only 3 episodes. It's finished now, but I think you can still get it on the iPlayer.
Okay.
And, of course, Homeland, which I've really been enjoying. I know people have said that it's something quality. And film-wise, I've yet to see it, but I really, really want to. I've heard so much about it. It's Gravity. I think I'm going to try and see it this weekend, actually.
I really enjoyed it. I think the thing I took from it, which was a tribute to, I think it's Alfonso Cuarón as the director.
He did Children of Men, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he did the Harry Potter film as well, didn't he?
The Azkaban.
Prisoner of Azkaban. Yeah. Although it's got this sort of epic scale to it, this ginormous, space background to it, it's quite a claustrophobic story. In fact, I actually, by the time I got to the end of it, I felt like I should be reaching for my inhaler. It was
really
brilliant. The tension is great. The acting's very good. I won't spoil plot points. But yeah, I'd recommend to go and see it on the big screen.
Did you see it in 3D or? Oh, of course you did, because you saw the trailer.
I watched it in 3D. Yeah. And it's great. I mean, it's not sort of a full-on sci-fi film.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of pseudo-scientific, because apparently professors have said, well, this wouldn't happen in reality and this wouldn't happen in reality. But it's very much sort of placed in the real world rather than being a sort of out there sort of Star Wars type film.
Right.
But it is just, and it's very compact as well. A lot of movies these days go on to try and be 2 hours, 3 hours, and this does in, I think, 90 minutes, just a perfect job. And it's really engaging.
Quite short.
Really,
quite short for a modern sort of blockbuster. I use the word, but 90 minutes is pretty good, actually.
There's a lot of character moments. You've got your two main characters, George Clooney and Sandra Bullock play the two main characters, and so you've got this massive sort of backdrop with these kind of very kitchen sink almost things playing out between the characters and their backstories. It's brilliant. I would recommend it to anyone to go and watch it. See it on the big screen. Some people don't like 3D. I'm not too bothered either way. I thought it kind of helped to sort of emphasize the scale and the scope of it. But yeah, just go and see it.
Oh, I'm definitely going to go and see that. And if I can just recommend a book as well. Yeah. I don't know if there are any Asterix fans out there, but the new Asterix book, it's the first Asterix book not written and illustrated by the original author and artist, Goscinny and Uderzo, because Uderzo's now, I think he's got Alzheimer's, and Goscinny's been dead for 30 years. But it's called Asterix and the Picts, so it's set in Scotland.
Okay.
So Asterix, and I don't know how au fait you are with Asterix. And
yeah, I used to read the comics as a kid.
So this is a real, true return to form, like an Asterix book you would have read in your youth, and it's set in Scotland, and it's all full of puns and jokes, and I heartily recommend that.
Oh, sweet.
That's my recommendation. a kid's book, but it's really wonderful.
So Declan, you, and we've kind of touched on it just slightly, you're a freelance writer.
Yes.
And you write for radio, TV, cinema.
Yes, just bits and bobs. Currently working on a sitcom with our mutual friend JR Southall, which has, or is about to be finally commissioned, and also a film that's going to start shooting next year, which I've been working on for ages. The script, it's a biopic of the actor Dirk Bogarde, and that, as far as I know, is going to start filming in March, April next year in the UK and France. So
wow.
I've written the first 2 drafts of the script, whether it's my final draft that ends up being the one used. But so that's essentially what I'm working on. And I'm not trying to sell things here. I have a book coming out.
Come on, this is your chance to plug. Come on, do it.
A book coming out. It was originally going to be on the 30th of November, but I've had to move it forward a week or two. It's called Steel Cathedrals, which is sort of a mixed bag of short stories and ideas and bits of imaginary scripts, and it's a bit hard to explain. But if anyone is interested in it, they can follow me on Twitter at Declan_May, or go to my website, declanmay.com. But if you're my friend on Facebook or on Twitter, you get a free digital copy.
Whoa.
So, and if you want a paper copy, it's only going to be about £3. But I already promised anyone who was my Twitter friend or Facebook friend gets a free copy, digital copy, if they want it, or they can just delete it.
I'll look forward to getting my copy.
You'll certainly get a paper copy in the post as well.
Wow! Do I get it signed?
You get it signed, but I get someone to sign it for you.
Yeah, thanks for that.
No, but so that's that. So, but if anyone is interested, you can find me on Facebook or on Twitter or at my website, declanmay.com.
Excellent. And of course, if you want to get in touch with the show, we're all over the place. We're on Twitter, so it's at Nerdology UK. We're also on Facebook. Just type in Nerdology UK podcast and you'll find us there. We're also on Google Plus, if anyone's kind of hanging around there. I know there's quite a few big Doctor Who communities and other bits and bobs on there.
Starting to grow.
So we're also there. Yeah. So yeah, get in touch. We're also on email, which is nerdologyuk@gmail.com. So thank you once again, Declan, for coming along. It's been a great pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, Mark, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to do it. And thank you for inviting me. And could I just say one more thing? Because our friend Simon Brett might be a bit cross with me if I don't. I just remembered there's another project. It's called the 12 Doctors of Christmas, which is
12 Doctors, 12 Days.
12 Doctors, 12
Days. Hashtag I've seen knocking
12
around.
Doctors, 12 Days. It's a sort of anthology of stories featuring each Doctor. I've written one. Lee Rawlins has written.
Who?
Lee Rawlins. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Never heard of him.
No. Simon Brett has written one. J.R. Southall has written a story, as well as some other one. I've written one, and there's wonderful writers and illustrators. It's all going to be illustrated. I don't know when it's going to be out, but I think you can find that on Facebook as well.
Cool. Excellent.
So featuring 12 Doctors, not 11, 12.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Mark.
And
sorry for all the plugging.
You never know, we might have you back again sometime.
I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to.
Well, thank you so much, Declan,
Thanks,
and we'll speak again soon.
All the best. Bye-bye.